Hey folks, Darren here, 10-minute tier time. On this episode, I'm going to look at Underwater Terrors, a podcast that I did with Frank about 5 years ago that I haven't really revisited since, and there's been a number of underwater terrors that have come out since then. So let's get started. Okay, so here are all the movies, and here are the tiers. So the bottom tier, being the worst tier, says Hung Up by the Buster Browns. I'm sure you can all remember what film that's taken from. You Ate My Bird is the fourth tier. I Never Heard of a Crocodile Crossing the Ocean is the third tier. Chew on This, You Ugly Bastard is the second tier, and Open Wide Say Ah is at the top for all the ones that I consider to be the best out of this crop of movies. So it could be any sort of, it could be a sea, it could be a river, a lake, any patch of water. There is one film where I'm kind of straying out of the water a little bit, but you'll understand why. But let's get started with this. So first on the list, I have Alligator, a movie that I saw way back when it first came out. I remember sitting and watching this with my dad, probably when I was about 8 or 9 years old, back in the early 1980s. Lewis Teague, Robert Forster starring in the movie. A really good film that holds up still today, and some of the alligator effects are just fantastic. So I'm going right to the top with this one. I'm going all the way to Chew on That, You Ugly Bastard. Sorry, Chew on This, You Ugly Bastard. Next up is Blood Beach, a movie directed by a guy called Jeffrey Bloom, which I saw in the early 80s as well. I think I saw this one on TV. John Saxon, Burt Young, who else was in there? David Huffman, I think. A movie about a creature that lives under the sand, so not technically in the sea, but I guess if the tide comes in, then you could say it is in the sea. But yeah, it was dragging people under, sometimes by their testicles. There's a few choice moments in this film. It's a load of old tosh, but great fun. But I'm going to put it in, where am I going to put it in now? You Ate My Bird, the fourth tier. Next up is Crawl. I'm actually a really big fan of Crawl. I'm a really big fan of the director, Alex Arja. He did movies like Piranha. He did movies like The Hills Have Eyes, High Tension. Great horror director, and Crawl was a nice little gem that he did, I think, about a Florida town that's flooded and alligators get into the crawl space of a house. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. It's got some great effects works in there, some great practical work in there as well, and it's loaded full of tension. So I'm going way up to where Alligator is there. So yeah, it's high up on my list. Deep Blue Sea. A movie that I saw when it came out again back in the late 90s, I think it was 1999. I've just recently received the 4K version of this movie. Rennie Harlin directed it. He was off the back of movies like, I guess, things like Cutthroat Island around this time, if I remember right, which wasn't too much of a success for him. But Deep Blue Sea's good fun. Thomas Jane, who else was in it now? Samuel L. Jackson, LL Cool J. A really good ensemble in this. Stellan Skarsgård as well. It's got some great practical shark effects. Got some really ropey CG shark effects as well. But it's fun. It is a lot of fun. I'm going to put it in the middle there. I Never Heard of a Crocodile Crossing the Ocean. Deep Rising, the late great Treat Williams in this. I think it was Stephen Hopkins who directed this. Remember, folks, I'm doing this off the top of my head. Stephen Hopkins, I think, that directed this. He went on to do The Mummy and things like that. I hope I'm right with that. Famke Janssen as well. A great monster movie aboard a cruise liner. Yeah, I revisited this recently with Frank. We did a best and worst of and really enjoyed it. I think it holds up quite a bit. So that's going right up to the second tier there. Chew on that, you ugly bastard. Piranha. Oh, one of my favorite underwater terror movies of all time. Joe Dante's, one of his first movies, I believe. Bradford Dillman, Heather Menzies, Kevin McCarthy, Dick Miller, who's always in Joe Dante's films. This for me is going right up to the top. I think it's one of the best Jaws knockoffs, but also I think it really holds up well as a genuinely creepy movie. And I think Piranha deserves to be in the second level there. I really love this film. Okay, Jaws 2. Jaws 2, Great movie. Jaws 2 is a great sequel. A little bit too much shouting and screaming for my liking, but I do like the fact that Roy Scheider came back, much to his duress. But yeah, it works as a sequel, I think, and has all the feels and everything of the original Jaws movie. I'm going to put it in the second tier, right next to Piranha. I think it's a very, very solid sequel, and just a shame that they couldn't stretch to get Dreyfuss in this. But never mind. Jaws 3D, dear. You Ate My Bird. Joe Alves movie set in SeaWorld, Florida. Yeah, how does it get in there when SeaWorld, Florida's inland? Who cares? It's a question that comes up every time I watch this film. But yeah, Jaws 3D, wasn't a big fan of it back then. Still not a big fan of it now. One of the weakest entries in the franchise. Jaws. One of the greatest movies of all time, I think. One of the greatest movies of all time. The ultimate summer blockbuster. It's unrivaled in this subgenre. And probably will be for my lifetime. So that's going all the way up to the top. Open wide, say ah. Deep Star 6, Sean S. Cunningham, who directed this. He had Friday the 13th fame. I remember seeing this when it first came out. Unfortunately, I don't believe we got a cinema release in the UK. I remember seeing it on US movie shows. And then when it came out here, I think it went straight to VHS. I'm pretty sure it did. Miguel Ferrer, Matt McCoy, in a movie about a bunch of people doing some nuclear work on the bottom of the ocean and unearth some sort of prehistoric creature that ends up eating half the cast. A lot of fun. I think it was really poorly reviewed when it first came out, but still I think it's worth a watch. It's got some nice little effects work in there as well. Going in the middle there, I never heard of a crocodile coming across the ocean. Next up, Lake Placid. Very well made film, directed by Steve Miner, great script by David Kelly, Bridget Fonda, Brendan Gleeson, Bill Pullman, in a movie that's kind of in and out in about 82 minutes or something like that. Really effective. Early days of CG, but still the crocodile, I think, looks really good in this. So that's going to go all the way to tier 2. Kind of like a crocodile or a gator movie. Next up, Leviathan. Fairly boring movie, I thought. Peter Weller, I seem to remember like some sort of them going to some Russian ship that's sunk at the bottom of the ocean and they end up coming across some sort of sea creature or something. And it all, I think it's pretty dull. It's quite well made, pretty dull. So it's going to go in the 4th category here. You Ate My Bird. The Meg, a complete CGI fest. This movie was in development for years. I had really high hopes for it, but when I heard Jason Statham was in it, my heart sank a little bit. It just didn't deliver what I wanted. The book had been around for years. It was incredibly popular, but when this movie came out, I don't think it quite delivered. And I guess it delivered for a young audience, an audience that weren't too familiar with Jaws. A daft movie for me. Going in the 4th tier there, You Ate My Bird. And also, I'm going to put the sequel next to it. I don't think that was any better. I don't think it was any worse. In fact, it was probably a little bit more entertaining because they threw dinosaurs in there as well. Both of those movies in the 4th tier. Next up, we have Open Water. Open Water's a creepy little movie. A couple find themselves drifting at sea. I can't remember what happens now. Do they get out of the boat and can't get back in? Something along those lines. But it's very clever and very kind of teasing with what it does with lighting in this film. You get lightning flashes and all of a sudden you can see a dorsal fin and things like that. Supposedly based on a true story, I think. It is quite scary if I'm honest. It's very low budget, but it's effective. It works. And I think I'm going to put it in the middle there. It's a long time since I've seen it. Maybe like 15, 20 years since I've seen it. Can't quite remember when it came out. It was in the early 2000s, I think. But yeah, Open Water in the tier. I never heard of a crocodile crossing the ocean. Next up, Piranha 2 Flying Killers. The movie that supposedly James Cameron was fired from. That's going to go right in the bottom here. Hung Up by Their Buster Browns. A really dreadful movie. A really weird kind of Italian-American cash-in that for me doesn't really work. And yeah, it has some pretty ropey dubbing that just kind of takes you out of the movie throughout. Alex Arger's Piranha. God, this was good. This was great fun. I think the original Piranha's genuinely quite scary in parts, but I think the remake is just balls out fun and over the top. And I really admired it for that. And that's going right up in the second category there. Piranha Double D, awful movie. Absolutely awful. Didn't live up to the remake whatsoever, and has just played for titillation in most parts. So I'm going to put that at the bottom there. It's not quite as bad as Piranha 2 Flying Killers, but it's going in You Ate My Bird. Jaws the Revenge. I always wonder what this movie would be like had Michael Caine not taken his role, because he's simply the best thing in it. The movie's nonsensical to me. I can watch it. I can have fun with it. I probably can feel more comfortable about watching this than I can Jaws 3. But it's still not a very good movie. So I'm going to put it in the same category as Jaws 3 there. You Ate My Bird. The next one's a bit of a surprise one. The Fog. If you remember, all the ghosts from The Fog came up from the depths of the ocean. So for me, they're underwater terrors. This is going right way up to the top tier for me. One of my favorite movies of all time, The Fog. Right at the side of Jaws there. Now, I'll let you know which one of those two I think is the better movie at the end. But yeah, it's top tier for me, is that one. The Shallows came out, I don't know, about 6 or 7 years ago. Joe may call it Sarah directing Blake Lively, and she's kind of a surfer that's caught out in a little way out into the ocean with the tide rising. She's on a rock and there's a great white circling her. Nice little film. One of those movies that's a bit similar to movies like Buried. Remember that with Ryan Reynolds, where he's in the casket for the whole movie? It's one of those kind of claustrophobic single-person movies, and I kind of liked it. I thought it was good fun. I'm going to put it in the middle there. I never heard of a crocodile crossing the ocean. And then finally, Humanoids from the Deep, a movie that I really, really adore because I just think it's batshit crazy. Whereas these kind of hybrid fishmen come out of the water and start attacking the residents of this coastal fishing town. It's directed by Barbara Peters, starring Doug McClure, Anne Turkle. Vic Morrow, of all people, is in here as well. It's a fun little movie. Recently just got the 4K. I'm looking forward to watching it again. Hard to believe when you watch this film that it's directed by a woman, given some of the content, but I think there may have been a little bit of meddling after the initial shoot of the film that she did. So that film, I think it's a lot of fun. I really do. I don't know how many of you have seen it. If you have, comment below. Let me know your thoughts. But I really enjoy it. And I'm going to put it in the second tier here because ever since I've been a kid, I've really enjoyed this movie. So there you have it, folks. At the bottom, hung up by the Buster Browns, we have Piranha 2 Flying Killers. In tier 4, You Ate My Bird, we have Blood Beach, Jaws 3D, Leviathan, The Meg 2, Piranha Double D, and Jaws the Revenge. Next up in tier 3, I never heard of a crocodile crossing the ocean. We have Deep Blue Sea, Deep Star 6, Open Water, and The Shallows. Tier 2, chew on this, you ugly bastard. We have Alligator, Crawl, Deep Rising, Piranha 1978, Jaws 2, Lake Placid, Piranha 2010, and Humanoids from the Deep. And at the top, open wide say we have Jaws and The Fog. Now, if you were to ask me which one of these I prefer, it's no question whatsoever. Jaws is the movie that I would consider to be the best of the two. But The Fog has got a special place in my heart and is a close second. And I do believe it's an underwater terror as The Fog movie. That's it. Thanks, folks. Slightly longer than I anticipated to do that one. There were 22 films. Maybe I should cut them down, but then you get people asking, what about this and what about that? And I'm sure I'll get people asking me why I didn't put, Sharknado in this or Crocodile or, I don't know, Rogue or something like that. But I've got to try and keep a sensible selection if I'm to do it within a period of time. Thanks again, folks. Thanks for all your support with all the recent videos. The disaster movie video did really well, and thanks for everybody who chimed in on that. If you haven't seen it, I'll put the link up there somewhere. You can take a look at it. I'll be back very soon with another 10-minute tier. And until then, thanks for all your support, and I shall see you very soon. Cheers.